The house at Hollow Creek. The bus rattled along the winding country road, its headlights cutting through sheets of autumn mist. Clara Hayes pressed her forehead against the cold glass and watched as the forest slipped by in blurred shades of gray and brown. She hadn't been back to Hollow Creek in nearly 10 years. 10 years was a long time, but somehow nothing in this part of the world ever seemed to change. The air still smelled of wet leaves and pine sap. The shadows in the woods still felt heavier than they should, as if they clung to anyone who dared to pass. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. No service. Typical. Hollow Creek had always been the kind of place that time forgot, where cell towers and fast food chains never reached. That was why she had left in the first place, chasing the noise and light of the city. But now, as part of her final year in journalism school, she was returning, ironically enough, to write an investigative piece on small-town folklore. And there was no better subject than the old mansion at the edge of town. Locals called it the Hollow House. Others called it the Whitmore estate, after the family that had owned it before tragedy struck decades ago. Stories swirled around the place. Strange lights in the windows, cries at night, even disappearances. Clara didn't believe in ghosts, but she knew a good story when she saw one. If she could uncover the truth about the house, about the massacre everyone whispered about but never explained, she'd have more than a school project. She might even have her first published article. The bus squealed to a stop in front of the gas station, the only one in Hollow Creek. Clara slung her backpack over her shoulder and stepped off into the crisp night. "Clara!" a voice called. She turned, and there was Ethan Moore leaning against his rusted pickup. He looked older than she remembered, sharper jawline, broader shoulders, but his eyes were the same, the kind of eyes that made you feel like he had been carrying secrets since childhood. "You made it," he said with a half smile. "You doubted me?" she teased, though her voice trembled a little. She hadn't realized how nervous she'd been until now. Ethan shrugged. "Most people don't come back to Hollow Creek once they've gotten out. Can't blame them." They loaded her bag into the truck and climbed in. The heater groaned to life, filling the cab with the smell of dust and old leather. "So," Ethan said as they pulled onto the main road, "what brings you back? Surely not nostalgia." "Senior project," Clara admitted. "I'm writing about small-town legends, and, well, Hollow Creek has one of the best." Ethan's jaw tightened on the steering wheel. For a moment, he didn't respond. Then he said, quietly, "You shouldn't go near it." Clara laughed. "Don't tell me you believe in all that ghost nonsense, too." He didn't laugh with her. The silence stretched as they drove through the town square. Hollow Creek looked exactly as it had when Clara was a child. The diner with its flickering neon sign, the church with its peeling white paint, the library looming dark behind rows of shuttered windows. It felt like a place trapped in amber, preserved but lifeless. Finally, Ethan pulled up in front of her grandmother's old house, where Clara would be staying. The porch sagged and the paint had faded to a pale ghost of its former blue. "You're really staying here?" asked Ethan. "Why not?" Clara said, forcing cheer into her voice. "It's free and it's close to everything." Ethan hesitated. "Just keep the doors locked at night." Clara rolled her eyes. "You sound like an old man." He didn't smile. That night, Clara unpacked in her grandmother's creaking house. Dust clung to everything. The air smelled faintly of mothballs and something sour she couldn't place. She lit a candle when the old lamps flickered and the flame's shadows danced across the wallpaper. On the mantel, she found a stack of yellowed newspapers, brittle with age. Her pulse quickened. She flipped through them looking for headlines and froze at one that read, "Tragedy strikes Whitmore family. 5 dead in night of blood." The article was short, vague, almost deliberately so. It claimed the family had been lost in an accident, but the language was strange. No details, no photographs, just a note that the estate had been abandoned since that night. Her grandmother must have kept it for a reason. As the wind howled outside, Clara sat on the floor and read every line, her pen scribbling notes in the margin of her notebook. She didn't notice the temperature dropping until her breath fogged in front of her. Then came the noise. A soft creak, like footsteps on the porch. Clara froze, straining to hear. Another creak, closer this time, then silence. She forced herself to the window, heart hammering. The porch was empty. She exhaled, laughing nervously at her own paranoia. But when she turned back, the newspaper lay open on a different page. She hadn't touched it. The headline read, "The Curse of Hollow Creek." And though the paper was decades old, the ink looked wet as if freshly printed. That night, Clara dreamed of the mansion. She saw it rising out of the fog, its windows glowing faintly like watching eyes. The front door creaked open on its own, and inside was nothing but darkness. A voice whispered her name from within. When she woke, the candle had burned down to a stub, and faintly, from the woods in the distance, came the sound of something hollow, like a door slamming shut.